In today's gospel, Elizabeth has a profound encounter with Jesus, and she was immediately changed by it. John the Baptist, still inside the womb, encountered Jesus and changed. A few verses before this gospel, Mary encountered Jesus for the first time, and of course her life would never be the same. As we continue through these last few days of Advent and begin our Christmas journey, we will see more and more people encounter Jesus for the first time. The shepherds will, the Magi will, Simeon will, even Herod will. But most importantly, will you? Will you just go through the motions of church as your part of your December busyness, or will you encounter Jesus in a life-changing way? We have all heard the Christmas story of Jesus so many times that we can take it for granted. We hold a lovely sanitized version of the story in our heads, like the mangers in our homes and the manger that will be here the next time you come. The people in the Gospels that we read in these weeks cannot take the Christmas story for granted because they have never heard it before. They are experiencing the Nativity for the first time. It is tragic and heartbreaking and amazing. We could rattle off the whole story in a few minutes, but the people living it don't know what's going to happen. This Christmas, I want you to imagine that you are experiencing the story for the first time. My family and I recently went to the theater to see The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It's a movie based on a 1972 book. The movie is entertaining and fun, but the best part is that it forces you to consider the nativity story as though you are hearing it for the first time. The movie centers around the Herdman family. The Herdmans are 6 kids from a rough family from the wrong side of the tracks. The Herdmans would never set foot in a church until they hear that the kids get snacks at Sunday school. On their mission for snacks, it happens that they come to the church on the day they are casting rolls for the upcoming Christmas program. The Herdmans don't know what a Christmas program is, and so they demand to be told the story. The leader takes out the Bible and reads the nativity story to the Herdmans who hear it for the first time. We in the audience are like the other church regulars in the movie, and we are taking the story for granted. The Herdmans are encountering Jesus for the first time, and unlike us, they are appropriately outraged at the story. As the nativity story is told, the Herdmans ask questions, probing questions about what's going on, and you begin to realize that they are right. This is not the simple romanticized story that we try to capture in our nativity scenes. Mary is pregnant through, as far as public opinion goes, questionable circumstances. Joseph could have disowned her, but instead, by deciding to stay, his character is called into question as well. When she is full term, their authoritarian government decides to take a census to extract more taxes. We can be annoyed if the census taker wants to talk in our living room for 20 minutes. Imagine instead the census taker told you that you had to travel to your grandparents' hometown to be counted there. You cannot hop on an airplane, you have to walk. And Nazareth to Bethlehem is 90 miles. Plus, every relative you have is going there too, and everyone else's relatives. It's no wonder it was impossible to find a normal, comfortable place to stay. Their place of shelter is a barn. Imagine that tonight you are going to sleep in a barn. What would the temperature be like? Where would you sleep? How would the smell be? Thankfully, our nativity scenes don't come with smells. This, though, is what Mary had, and she was 9 months pregnant and had walked 90 miles. In a hospital, your newborn is carried by people wearing gloves and placed under a heating lamp. Jesus' only visitors were dirty shepherds, and his bed was an animal's feeding trough. When the Herdmans hear about swaddling clothes, they are humorously outraged. What do you mean they tied Jesus up and put him in a box? The next time you look at a nativity scene in your home or here in this church next week or wherever you find one, think about what Mary and Joseph went through to get there. And also, think about what's coming next. as Mary and Joseph gaze lovingly down at their beautiful new baby. And that moment is real because Jesus would have been wonderful and cute and perfect and remarkable even in that setting. But in that moment, they do not know that the worst is still to come. Sometime after that, they learn that the king has heard rumors of their son and is so terrified of him that he is killing all of the babies in their region. Imagine that. Imagine the government goes on a sudden killing spree of infants. How terrified would we be? How terrified would you be if you knew that your child was the one they were after? Mary and Joseph take Jesus and abandon their town and their country. Jesus' first years are spent as a refugee. The Nativity is not a simple romantic story. It is a frantic tragedy. This is the beginning of the story of our Savior. Christmas is not a story that was created, invented to make us feel good. It was a real event that happened because God knew the mess of our lives and he came to save us. So why do we focus on such a sanitized version of this story? Part of the reason, I think, is that we too often see sanitized versions of ourselves. It is easy for me to think I'm a pretty good person. I don't need a savior. Mary's cousin Elizabeth in the gospel today knew she needed a savior. The shepherds knew they needed a savior. The herdmans were able to see the story for what it is because their life was a constant disaster and they were craving a savior. Every one of us here is struggling with something. Are we willing to admit it? Are we willing to admit that we need a savior? Are we willing to hear the nativity story in the coming days as though we are hearing it for the first time and that Jesus comes because of us? Am I willing to admit that Jesus has to come because of me? Some of us here today are very familiar with our own sufferings. Some of us struggle not just with the self-imposed busyness of December. We struggle with loneliness. We struggle with insecurity. We struggle to find our place in the world or even our place in the church. If that's you, you are just like Mary and Elizabeth and John and the shepherds. You are ready for an encounter with Jesus. He comes for you. He comes leaving the 99 behind and looking for you. In these last days of Advent and in the 19 days of the Christmas season that follow, will you let yourself encounter Jesus as Elizabeth did, as John the Baptist did, as Mary and the shepherds and the herdmans? He will be here on this altar for you, an even more sanitized version of those real events than the Nativity is. He will be here again Tuesday at 4 and at midnight and on Wednesday morning. He will be here in this chapel and in this tabernacle ready for you. And he will be with you always, as long as you are willing to admit that you need a Savior.